Welcome to the Law, Your Money, and You. I'm Roberta, Saphire, an attorney in Sharon, Massachusetts.
And I'm Camille, Barron, a healthcare advisor and financial coordinator, also in Sharon, Massachusetts. And today we have an exciting topic. The whole thing is a rage now, STEM teaching, science, technology,
We could say education.
Engineering.
Engineering and math, right?
And math.
Mm-hmm. Engineering and math, right.
I always say math and money, and that voice from beyond was our guest here, Doug
Tepe.
Tepe,
Correct.
T-E-P-E. Was that
Right.
shortened from something else?
Not as far as we know, although my ancestors were originally from Germany and came through Ellis Island, and so a lot of it, is just kind of lost in the mystery of becoming an American citizen 100 years ago.
That's right, yeah.
Well, you know why they call an Italian Tony? Because when they were in New York on Ellis Island, the relatives shipped it, and it said, to New York, T-O-N-Y. He always falls for the So that's how we got.
That could be it. That could be
Who
it.
knows?
But
It could be.
yeah, no, my original ancestors were all German speaking, and the rest of it is all guesswork, really.
Well, the German speaking is like Yiddish, and when they
Right.
came over, they were told what to say because they didn't understand English. So
Right.
the next person up, they said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Ein vergessen," which means in Yiddish, "I forget." So they wrote down Andy Ferguson. Anyway, we are fascinated by stem cell, and I don't mean to take away, but
No
please
problem.
tell us about yourself and about what you do, because that's so important.
So I work with a group called Tinker and Create, and we teach at a variety of schools and community centers, churches, and synagogues all throughout the southeastern Massachusetts area. As of this year, we are now up to 23 towns and 73 courses since we first started a few years ago. And so it's been a really exciting opportunity. I'm currently working with Itai Arman. He's the founder of the organization, he and his wife. We're trying to see if they can actually improve to get more opportunities for their daughters who were in the in the 4th or the 5th grade at the time here in the Sharon Public Schools. And they wanted to get more opportunities because a lot of things in the STEM category don't really start getting going until the middle school or in the high school. And so they wanted to see if they could get more of these opportunities. And so that's how Tinker and Create was first formed, was to try and see if we could offer through the local school districts more opportunities for students to get access to science, technology, engineering, and math.
Are those under grants or?
Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Tinker and Create is a for-profit organization, but they do work with a lot of grant-making groups in a variety of different places. So, for example, in some of the schools down south, such as Attleboro and the like, they've actually acquired grants that were actually enabled us to provide our services in after-school programs totally free for the students. So that way, regardless of their financial ability, they could still take a lot of these classes. Likewise, too, we also partnered up with other groups such as the Boys and Girls Club of Pawtucket, and enabling their members to go off and get more STEM opportunities and the like as well.
So why is it important now? Why is STEM opportunity so
What
important?
is a STEM opportunity?
STEM. So yes, to go back into STEM, the STEM is short for science, technology, engineering, and math. Sometimes they even stick the A in there as well, referring to, they call it STEAM in that case, which would refer to art. And it really is a movement to try to fill in the gaps that a lot of school districts just can't necessarily do themselves, either just due to budgetary limitations or just limitations of the teachers themselves. So by actually introducing a lot of these extracurricular programs, Tinker and Create, and many of the other groups that are just like them, are able to fill in a lot of these gaps that a lot of children may not necessarily have otherwise. So it's important because computers and technology are just so important as a part of our modern day economy now. So many people can go off and find jobs working for the big companies like Google and Facebook and the like. And for students who are maybe in the 4th or the 5th grade, just to have that first opportunity to actually see of what the potential can actually be, a lot of them had never necessarily even had it before. And so it's really exciting for me as an instructor to bring this to the students so that way they can actually start learning about some of these skills at an early age so they can actually get excited about them and then be prepared more for it as they advance into high school.
Tell me if this is still true, but in the past years I've read a lot about the reason for hiring people from other countries is because people are graduating from college in this country and there's a lack of those skill sets sometimes with United States college graduates.
Yep.
So they have to go overseas and hire people from those countries.
Right. And for my generation, I mean, I'm 43 myself right now, and so I guess they often kind of label me as maybe somewhere between Gen X and maybe Gen Y perhaps. But for me, I was a child of the 1980s, and so a lot of my childhood was just learning a lot of these things just for fun. And that's actually how I originally got into it. I actually went to college, studied political science, went to law school, went to New England Law in Boston. Oh, you too. And so as a student of science and technology, though, just someone who's always goofed around with it, it's something that I have been doing since I was a little kid. And so, you know, part of it was because back in that generation, you know, people had to learn how to start these things right from scratch, right from the get-go. You didn't necessarily have computers doing everything for you like we have these days. And so I was very self-taught in a lot of it. So even when I went to law school, I was still dabbling in a lot of it. And so for New England Law, I had actually spent some time working for them as their webmaster, actually, in the years after I graduated. And I've actually spent very little time practicing law. Instead, I've been actually just going around and making my living off of computers and the like.
I tried to interrupt.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, you're great. But give us an idea that you walk into a class. What happens? Like, what is it? Say, hi, kids, I'm here to do this.
A good example of the class, one of my classes, one of our classes that I actually created the curriculum for is on video game design. One of my passions myself is video games. I've always considered myself a gamer throughout my life, and so even having learned at a young age on the very early 1980s game consoles and the like, I've taught myself a lot of how to make games even back 30 years ago now. So I try and take that same excitement and share it with the students. So when I first go into the class, it actually starts out as just a discussion about the video games. You know, since most of our classes usually are children between grades of like the 3rd grade and the 8th grade, I can go in there and just go off and start off a discussion about what do they like about games. And they love telling me all about their favorite games. And so it's usually just a great way for me to start out talking about games and to get them thinking about things that maybe they haven't had a chance to think about before. A lot of them might have only been playing one style of game. And there are so many other styles of games out there. There's so much artistry and culture that has actually become part of the entire video gaming experience these days. I want the students to understand that themselves. So, you know, maybe they might be familiar with some other games because they have a big brother or a big sister who also plays games or something like that. But they probably have had a very limited amount of experience with it. So my very first class, I'll just start out talking about games. And we'll talk about games and we'll talk about all the different kinds of games, who the game designers are, what they use, what tools they use to make the games. And in this case, we're actually referring to game engines. And I introduce into the concept of game engines, which is the actual software that is used to help design and create the game engines. And then we go into a discussion about the history of video games, how they've grown over the years, how games have always included people of all sorts of different walks of life. Some of the very first game designers were actually women, and sometimes a lot of people often forget that actually women can be involved in games too. And I try to enforce that among the students too, so that way they understand that, you know, if there's girls in the classroom, they too can become a game designer, just like some of the very earliest game designers. And that's just the first class. And then going into the second class, we actually introduce them to a game engine. And I teach them how to use the game engine so they can actually start building their own ideas. Whatever the ideas they might have, they can start building it. So in our case, we use a game engine that's called Unreal Engine. It is the same game engine that was made popular by, it was made by the same company that created the game Fortnite. And the game Fortnite has been extremely wildly popular over the past few years. There's been, you know, news stories about it. Celebrities are playing it, and, you know, kids are trying to sneak into school all the time and probably driving their their teachers nuts, always talking about Fortnite all the time. So this was actually designed using the Unreal game engine. So I actually used the Unreal game engine to show them how they can build other games. Now, at Tinker and Create, one of our main goals is to include, along with the actual hard skills that they would be learning, computer programming and the actual ideas of computer science and the like that goes into making games, we also want to try and teach them a certain level of ethics as well. So there's a lot of very violent video games out there. And so we try to encourage them to actually understand that, their violence has consequences and the like. And so in the case of Tinker and Create, if we encourage them to learn games, the games we're going to be teaching them are the sort of games that might actually have less of a violent bent to it. So that way we can encourage the students to actually, again, realize that there's many more opportunities out there than just the violent video games, particularly, again, of course, Fortnite, which is a battle royale style game where it's just fighting all the time. Quite violent. So instead, I give them the opportunity to build games such as running style games where you just have a little runner who runs down a track and they have to dodge things, and it's actually like the old game that children like to play where they grab all of the cushions off of their sofa and they throw them onto the floor and then they jump from cushion to cushion. And they say, what's going on the floor? They say it's lava, right? So I'm trying to jump over the lava, right? And that's like making a video game. So we have a running style game. That's our prime build out that we have the students follow along with us. And they learn how to jump around lava. And they have their little character on the screen jumping around, and that is actually the gameplay element. And so then in the course of that, they have fun actually building up their own ideas. They can actually position their platforms however they want. They learn how they can actually paint the lava. So they actually build the lava from scratch, so it looks like it's moving and flowing like real lava. They use the game engine to build that. And then they can actually use their own creative ideas to start filling that in. And then throughout this whole time, I'm able to sneak in all sorts of extra little educational bits, such as computer programming concepts, where they can learn, for example, how the actual game engine will plan triggers and events. So if the students happen to pass this point, it rings a little bell. Congratulations, you made it to the end zone. And they can keep on running and they can learn all the programming aspects of it while having fun, too.
Two of my grandchildren are fanatics at it, but one of them, the others too, they could have people on the other phone, with the earphones, and they're playing the same game. Do you go into that too? Over the internet?
Not really. That actually gets into the computer networking and the like, which I'm sure I could probably spend an entire course just on that alone, of course. But a lot of that, these days, what's become incredibly popular is what they call esports, electronic sports, where you have celebrities even earning millions of dollars playing video games now. And again, just like with professional sports, traditional professional sports, it's all about the viewership. So if you get, 20 million people watching this one celebrity, then yes, he's making $1 million because he's just that famous. So you have esports that have made this style of networked gaming possible, where you can put on a little headphone and chat with your friends and play your favorite game and the like. So I try to make it as much of a collaborative experience for the students. So that's actually part of the more soft skills that we also try to teach the students as well. So that way they're encouraged to actually sit down and work in teams, so that way they can collaborate together. Because again, a lot of the major game studios oftentimes can be entire teams of maybe 10, 20, oftentimes even hundreds of people all working together, just like with movies, where the movies have hundreds of people all working together to produce this high quality cinematic or storytelling experience of this that the players get to experience. So just like with online gaming, where students are chatting over the network with their friends, I encourage them to sit next to their friends and try and brainstorm ideas, help them figure out why things went wrong and how they can make it better. And these are 21st century skills. These are still some of the very same skills that the students can learn with STEM that they would also be needing as well. These soft skills where they learn about collaboration and working together in teams to actually produce something. It's the same sort of tools that can be beneficial even at, say, Facebook or Google or something like that. So hopefully they can learn in amidst, while they're having fun, of course, all these extra skills while they're at it.
This is a voluntary thing for the students?
Yes, it is voluntary. Usually the way we've often have it set up is through after-school programs, so the students can actually sign up for it and participate in it, and particularly in venues where we've been able to get grants with the school district or with the after-school program, the students, again, can actually participate in the class regardless of their own financial background. And so, again, it can give them a lot of great opportunities. Part of the reason actually why we chose Unreal Engine, among other software that we use, is that it's actually free. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that the students actually have the tools that they can without necessarily having to spend the extra money. And so even if they want to take it to, say, the local libraries, I encourage them to go to their library, talk to the librarian, and see if they can get some of the software on the library so they can continue to learn and grow more. Some of the other classes we offer too are classes on 3D modeling, 3D printing, and 3D animation, which is all done through a program called Blender, which is also a free program. So again, even if they don't even have computers themselves, a lot of local libraries often will actually be amenable to actually allowing the students to go ahead and
Don't you need a special 3D printer?
You need a 3D printer, and that's true. 3D printers are actually becoming more common these days. I've even heard of a situation where some public libraries have actually acquired their own 3D printer. And it's just like with using the color printer or the color copier at a library. You still have to pay for it, of course. But just to actually have the device there, you can actually come in and print it out. So it's not necessarily that widespread, but I have heard of a couple of situations where public libraries have actually gotten 3D printers that the town can use if they want.
Amazing. So you must really enjoy the excitement and the enthusiasm that you see in the children as they go through this. Yeah,
the students are really great. It's funny too, because sometimes in some of my classes the students can get really bouncy, and someone who might come walking by will see the students all bouncing around. I'm like, no, that's okay. They're actually learning. And since it is an after-school class, I try to make it actually a little bit more on the fun side. They've been going through a whole day of rigorous education, so once they actually get into this, I try to keep it fun while still actually trying to have more opportunities to sneak in a little bit of learning. And I try and sneak in as much learning as possible. I mean, even in terms of learning about geology or physics and the like, for example, my example of the lava earlier, there's actually pictures of the rocks that occur near lava fields that you can actually include in the game. The rock is called Basalt, and so I start talking about how volcanoes work and geology, and I say, no, this is why we're using this picture of basalt here, is we want to make it look realistic in our video game, so we have this picture of basalt. So again, I'm just sneaking a little bit. Basalt is spelled B-A-S-A-L-T.
Oh, just as a son.
It's a volcanic rock. And this happens that there's actually a picture of it available for free along with Unreal Engine. So again, it's part of a free package because you have this picture. You can wrap the picture around the 3D objects in the game, and then you can actually have something that appears to be volcanic rock. And so then I sneak a little bit of that education in there. And likewise, too, there can be opportunities for teaching them physics, such as if they have their character jump up in the air, the game will actually refer to that as velocity. And as they jump up in the air, then gravity takes over and pulls them back down again. And it's the exact same rules that we actually have on planet Earth here. So when they they jump up in the air, they might be jumping at 6 meters per second, I think it was. Excuse me, that's the acceleration actually. So the effect would be is that as they go up, it pulls them back down again. It sounds fast, but again, gravity is pulling people back down at 9.8, I believe it was. It's been a while since I remember this, but of course, like I said, I always try and sneak these things in so the students can learn this. And it's funny because then they get all excited about it, and these are concepts that they may not necessarily even get until the 9th grade.
Sure. Is there a reason why the schools don't teach this?
Well, a lot of schools actually do, and it often will vary depending on the school district and the like. So some school districts, they start offering them in the middle school, so 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We start actually seeing a lot more coding classes and the like. But generally not so much for the younger kids. I think just probably due to limitations of elementary education. As well as the fact that, a lot of the stuff does get pretty advanced. And so what we try and do is to make sure that they can actually learn it on their own level. So as I mentioned, we teach classes anywhere from 3rd grade to 8th grade. So the 3rd graders, of course, will definitely need to have a little bit more of something at their level that they can understand, while the 8th graders can perhaps do some of the more advanced things. So in the end, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's actually a failure of the school system. I would say it's actually that we just complement it.
Sure.
So what the school system is offering, we can offer a few more opportunities. 3D printing is extremely expensive. So when we teach our class on toy design, for example, and the students are actually able to make their own tops that they'll then actually show at the end of the class, after 6 weeks of the class, they'll make their own top, 3D printed. And they can actually participate in that. Now, 3D printing itself, though, is actually very expensive, and so a lot of school districts, again, may not necessarily have the ability to go up and have 3D printing classes.
I think Sharon High has a 3D printer.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. My children actually go to the Sharon Public School, but the oldest right now is only in the 6th grade, so I'll probably find out in a few years what Sharon High has to offer. But
Yeah, I think there's one there.
yeah.
Have you gotten feedback from the parents of these kids?
Yeah, it's usually
good
pretty
question.
positive. Yeah, one of the things that we do is we usually invite the parents in the last few classes to come and actually see what their students have done, particularly for the game design class, because it's actually fun just to see the actual dynamics of the classroom. And so the parents will all come into the classroom and they're asked the kids questions, and of course the biggest question always is, how can we continue doing this at home? So I usually have a handout that I give to the parents, and they can take it home and encourage their young game designers to go off and do more things. Some of the other classes we offer are also on web design. So the web design is I have the students actually produce something that can be immediately put onto the internet. And then in that case, I don't need to necessarily invite the parents in, because then the parents can actually see it every single night. So I have the students go home with a little sheet that has all of the projects that they worked on and all of the web addresses. So they can literally go home, type that web address into a computer, and show it off to their family every single time.
There's a lot of free websites out there that let you do that.
Yeah, in particular, we use a website called Glitch, which is a free website as well. And Glitch is primarily designed for educational purposes. They want people to learn about the internet and to be good web citizens, to be in a participatory style of being on the web, understanding people from the other parts of the world, working together, collaboration, as I mentioned, and being a smart web citizen, so you can actually help people out, make the web and make the world hopefully a better place. So Glitch is a really great resource in that regard, because they are definitely designed for encouraging people to be good web citizens, working together and making amazing things.
I find that fascinating, especially when you think of the internet. It's like anybody can really use the internet. I think the thing is, how do you build something there and you can't really even see it? It's just there.
Yeah, it's just there. And with the World Wide Web literally being on the whole world, a lot of the examples I use are websites that can be available all around the world. For example, one of the activities that I have for the students is actually something that was created by the Mozilla Foundation. Mozilla is the organization that creates the Firefox web browser. They're a non-for-profit organization that is dedicated to promoting the web, promoting privacy and safety on the web. And so one of the projects that they did was actually in their Philippine branch. A bunch of Filipino children actually came up with this really clever game that you can use. They're like little dice cubes, and these dice cubes can all be stacked in order to actually show how web design is actually made. So it kind of gives the students really a great perspective on how the web can be a worldwide activity and not just something limited to what you might have here in your own school district.
Do you have, remember she told you it would go by quickly? We're in your portion what's called You've Got to Be Kidding, which is funny stories. Either you tell us or we tell you, you go, You've got to be kidding. I would think that before I pull out any of mine, I would think that you would have some, like a little kid said something to you.
Well, here we are actually in Massachusetts. This I guess is a little bit funny to me as a teacher, and any other teachers out there could probably sympathize with this. So we've only got a week left until the February break period, and so the students are already kind of tired after having a month and a half of school, and so today I was teaching my class, and the principal came in and was just kind of watching along, and the students were all behaving very well, and the principal said, "Oh, is everything going fine?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, the students are great. We're having a great time." This was at a middle school, so this would have been fifth graders, fifth, sixth, and seventh graders at this particular school district. And so the principal came in, and the students were all doing well, and I said, "Oh, yeah, the students have been great. We've been having a lot of fun." And then as soon as the principal left, then something crashed behind me, and I turned around, and someone had thrown something. I didn't actually see what it was, but I turned around to the students and I said, "Look, the principal just left.
Yeah.
And I told you all about how well behaved you were, and then one of you threw something."
Yeah.
And they all looked very sheepish, and they got back into their seats again. But afterwards, when I was leaving the school, I stopped by the principal's office, and she just laughed and said, yes, well, we've only got a week till the
Yeah,
February break,
that's
so
no
these
kidding.
things tend to happen right before the break period. I said, okay.
Then you know it's time for break.
That's a
But,
good one.
but by and large, they were all very well-behaved students, and this was actually our 5th week at least, so they've been following along very well up until this point. So I'll forgive them for that little
Good.
transgression.
Excellent.
Well, part of what we do too is, besides letting you know how our police officers or our friends' books are doing, we finally finished one for a second time. But I wanted to get on the scams. I was telling Camille how they not only, the robocallers, you think if you don't answer the phone that's the end of them. They leave messages, and in 2 days I got 4 calls from different numbers about how the my mind is going. I'm thinking of each one there about how that they're going to report me and go after me for the FBI because there's Social Security fraud, and what was the other fraud? Social Security fraud and
Tax fraud or something.
Yeah, tax fraud, and they're going to report me, and I better call them back because the FBI is going to be coming to me to arrest me. And 4 different, and people fall for that too. You know, I get it and I go, well, you got to be kidding. And they're more and more, and they leave messages. And today I got a message for people who have Amazon, and Amazon is getting more and more popular out there. And they said how Amazon, somebody used my credit card on Amazon and they suspended my account. But a lot of people get, but I mean, it stopped me because I actually checked it out. A lot of times I don't even check it out, but I did check this one out.
Didn't you have a kind of an addendum to what Roberta just said about the phone call?
Yeah, well, phone calls.
message?
Phone calls I've been getting on my phone lately are all seem to be in Mandarin, and so I've got some friends who speak Mandarin, and they've translated for me. Where it's literally the same thing. There's this is the FBI.
The same message,
Yeah, almost
only
the
in
same
Mandarin.
message, but it just happens to be in Mandarin. But it's also funny too. One of the other things in terms of my web design class and teaching the students how to be good web citizens is how to protect themselves too.
Oh,
So
that's good.
if they get some kind of suspicious message like that, how they can actually be aware of where they are on the web and what's actually going on, so that way they can say, oh, I see what's going on. This is just someone who's trying to scam me, and they can protect themselves and their family and loved ones as well, so that way someone's not going to be pulled a fast one because they see that message on their phone and they're like, oh no, what happened? Then they can have these smart students go up and say, oh no, don't worry, these are probably just a scammer.
Yeah, what a good way to wind
That's
up
right, we
the
have to
show.
wrap up now.
So there we go.
Yeah.
See, that was fast,
You've
wasn't
been
it?
wonderful. I have
Yes,
to
we'd love to have you
applaud
back.
Thank you.
What a wonderful service.
Maybe you
too.
could bring a
God
student or
bless you.
two, and they could
Yeah,
show us some of
bring
the
a
things they've
student.
done.
Yeah.
Oh well, they're all very good students. I'm sure they would be great members
Does
of our
robotics
group here.
fall into this category?
Robotics does.
too?
Robotics actually isn't a class that I've been teaching, but it is among some of the other instructors that we have. We will be hopefully having robotics someday too.
All right,
Fabulous.
we have to stop there.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. And to our viewers, I'm sure
Yeah.
you enjoyed it too, because it's
Absolutely.
fascinating. So please, we're wrapping up now, but please let us hear from you if you have questions about this topic or any other topic, or you have ideas for other shows. Because remember, this is your show, the law, your money, and you.